The Media Project. Imagine a vibrant region that embraces innovative technology and systems, allowing individuals and businesses to grow and thrive within the natural and cultural lifestyle of Vermont. Imagine the Black River Innovation Campus. Our community includes business and technology programming, co-working and technology tools, and other exciting experiences that are quickly creating an outsized impact to our little corner of northern New England here in Springfield, Vermont. PC Mag rates Springfield, Vermont number 8 for the best work-from-home cities in the U.S. Join us in Vermont. Begin your journey at bricvt.org.
Hey out there, it's the Innovato2 crew once again coming to you to talk all things rural technology from the wilds of the great state of Vermont. I am your co-host, Scott Graves, and with us in the virtual studio tonight are my two esteemed co-hosts, talking a lot about history here off camera before we get started. It was fascinating conversation, guys. So Will Jeffries up in Burlington, Vermont. How are you doing, Will?
Cold up here, but it's a good weather. It was bright and crisp and clear today.
Yeah, man, I was in Massachusetts on Saturday. It was 54 degrees, had the sunroof open, the whole 9 yards. Came back by the end of the night to Vermont. It was 13 degrees. It was pretty.
That's a whole nother world.
Ryan Munn is over there in White River Junction, the WRJ. What's going on over there?
Oh, yeah, it was -7 this morning. The dogs were out and back in real quick. Good to be here, though.
Well, we're not, the Innovato2 crew is not here to actually replace the NOAA. That's been probably gutted at this point. But we are here to talk to our esteemed guest. I've used esteemed twice so far in this podcast. I'm, of course, talking about Jerry Carter of Moody's Advisors. I'm going to let Will, though, set the pace, if you will, because Will, I believe you brought Jerry to our attention to participate today, did you not?
But it was in fact Claire Wheeler over at Mercy Connections, Director of Inclusive Entrepreneurship there, who first connected Jerry and I. So that was a couple of months ago, and Jerry and I connected over a video call then over our shared interest in entrepreneurship and startups. And among many things, Jeremy mentioned his interest in working with investors, for example, who care about more than just financial returns and helping Vermont companies to grow and succeed in the local economy. So he has a network of professionals that extends well beyond professional services, and would just love to hear a take on the sort of things that motivate him in this space and what trends we're seeing in the landscape right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for having me. Like you said, Will and Scott, I'm a business law attorney with Moody Advisors. We work with companies in all stages and industries, and ranging from closely held businesses to venture capital backed is a large percentage of our client base. So they take in third-party investments, and their business model typically is to grow pretty fast and hopefully sell within 5 to 10 years. We work with companies all over the world, actually, but mainly they normally have some kind of connection to here in Vermont. We work with a lot of Vermont businesses, doing all kinds of stuff from healthcare technology to the beverage industry, consumer goods, and a lot of business-to-business companies we work with frequently. And so we work with companies all the way from ideation. So if someone has an idea, they come to us and say, hey, what do we do? We want to bring this idea to market. How do we do that? So we work with founders to come up with, the ideal business structure based on their current situation and what their plans are and what their goals are. Then we also work with investors, so people who are just looking to invest in those type of companies.
Very cool.
What does the outlook that presents itself right now of investors here in Vermont that are interested in investing in business? I mean, what's the depth of that?
Yeah, it's been interesting, I'd say 3 years. I mean, during the pandemic, we had the crazy valuations that, I think people were seeing everywhere. Vermont certainly wasn't immune to that. You also saw the rise of a few new kind of institutional investors, if you will, in Vermont. And so for a few years, there was a lot of capital available. But since then, there's been a market slowdown that has affected companies big and small. Certainly companies here that it's been hard to get over the high valuations that they accepted financing on just, 3 years ago. We're starting to see some movement again, but there's definitely been a slowdown in investment, at least that we've seen over the last 2 years now.
So when you talk about high valuations, the average Americans, may be familiar with property valuations and seeing that sort of big explosion. But it sounds like really in the business world, similarly, businesses have been valued in that same kind of bubble atmosphere. And so folks have taken investment at certain equity values or even taken out debt at those values. And now they're feeling the pressure of that market correction, if you will, is what it sounds like. So what kind of things are folks able to do or looking to do or looking to for your help in order to overcome that or to weather a storm like that?
Yeah, so good question. We've done a lot of bridge financing rounds over the last 2 years where companies are looking to do non-priced rounds. So they're not, it's normally a debt, convertible debt financing or a safe financing where you're not having to value the company in order to do the financing. So we've done a lot of that, and the hope there being that whatever additional financing they get in that bridge round will get them to a place where they can do a priced round at a valuation that's higher than the one they did, 3 years ago at this point.
Gotcha. Interesting. And so has that affected other aspects like revenue or, the rates for the debt that they're looking at?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You definitely see more investor favorable terms. But you also have, people who have invested a lot of money in some of these companies, and they may be willing to extend a loan at, favorable terms, but they're not looking to cripple the company. They want to see the company succeed because they're already invested.
They want to get a return on their investment, and they realize they need some time to make that happen.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So none of these people could be happy right now with just the beginning stirrings. We do a lot of reading here at the Innovative podcast, a lot of different sources, right? And you're starting to see people say, ooh, there's some instability coming. Are we already in a recession? Is the recession coming if we're not already in one? And of course, the answer to all of this right now is we just don't know, because there's a lot of just instability that's being created that, so I hate to, in the first 10 minutes, to create an environment of what are your predictions? So that's not necessarily what I'm doing here, Jerry. But there's a lot of folks that have to be nervous right now, right? Because capital in any form is not any easier to get. And if you're sitting on an overvaluation and the economy around you is rapidly changing, I just, how does this bode generally gets more specific to Vermont, with businesses that sort of encompass this group that we're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a couple, there's good, bad, and ugly that are kind of mixed all into the uncertainty, unfortunately. We are fortunate we don't represent a lot of companies in the manufacturing space that will be, really hurt by the tariffs that sound like they are going to go into place. We're hoping our clients will benefit from some of the deregulation that is happening daily, and that maybe, and we're hoping it helps, not in the day to day, but maybe it creates an environment where an acquisition that for whatever reason wasn't attractive a few months ago, maybe it is today. So we're hoping that creates some opportunity for some of these companies that, should have sold by now, will sell, which the hope is creates liquidity in the market that investors want to reinvest. So that's kind of the best case scenario that, that's how we hope things work out. I think one of the great things about, Vermont is a lot of the both founders and investors who, if they're lucky enough to get an exit, they want to put that money back into the state. So, if we have a few of those exits, I think that would be really good for the local economy.
One of the anticipated, dare I say, benefits to the new administration is people are hoping that access to a lot of foreign capital that wants to come to the United States becomes a little easier. So taking oligarchic money aside, pull that out. Okay, I don't want our listeners from Vermont going, you're talking about bad money. I'm not talking about bad money. Bad money's going to go where it's going to go anyways. But for some of this like family fund money, right, that could be, it could frankly just make it easier to get in the United States because a lot of that money's been delayed for a long period of time, right? Would we, what's the likelihood that we'll see a benefit here in Vermont, versus other places? Or is most of that money going to end up staying concentrated in, in some of the major metros where foreign investment money usually gets to?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know is the short answer. I mean, I think, we've seen there was a huge uptick of new first-time fund managers, at the end of the pandemic. There's at the same time since then really been a consolidation of the limited LP money that's available going to seasoned fund managers. And so I think to the international point, I would expect that most of that money will go to those seasoned fund managers that tend to invest in other areas outside of northern New England. But we'll see. I'm anxious to see what happens. The Biden administration had launched the SSBCI program through the SBA that was supposed to get millions of dollars to every state, which I was hopeful would create new opportunities for places that often aren't seen as tech hotbeds on the coast. Vermont, I think, has done a good job of getting that money and getting it deployed. I don't think a lot of other states have been as quick to do that, which is, going to be to their detriment, because that money may not be available going forward. We'll have to see.
Right. So let's turn that around a bit, right? If you were in charge, put you on the hot seat, what would you do for this ecosystem to make Vermont the more attractive place for some of that private money to come?
I mean, not surprising. I think one of the biggest things is creating a bigger and cheaper housing stock. I've been really excited to see that's finally seems to be getting some legs down in the capital. So hopefully we'll, see more houses going up that are affordable, but also a mix of ones that are attractive for young professionals. So that, especially like Chittenden County continues to still be a place that is an attractive place to live for people in those either, tech jobs or higher paying professional jobs.
So, and for those who aren't, they're just listening here, Jerry, you're kind of a young guy when it comes to attorneys in the state.
Yep.
And, without dropping any names, you were with a pretty large law firm in the past. And so I'm curious both, what drove you to the transition, or what attracted you in that transition to, work with Moody Advisors over the past years, and further maybe expand on that, on, what's already here in Vermont. What are the things that you do see attracting, both business founders and investors? Why should investors be either looking to invest in Vermont or looking for those fund managers with experience that are also looking to invest in places like Vermont where they can have an impact?
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, so I mean, my partner Tom Moody and I, we decided to launch Moody Advisors 3 years ago. Really because, we had been advising startups. I mean, Tom had been doing it for 30 years. He really wanted to try it out himself before retiring. So luckily has no plans to retire anytime soon. But and I grew up, my dad is also an attorney and has always had his own firm. So I always felt, for whatever reason, nothing in particular, kind of uncomfortable at a bigger organization. And I've always been attracted to smaller firms. So it just, made sense at the time, and we're really happy we did it. We really just picked up our practice and opened our own doors. And I think I'm at this point super thankful for having done it, because it's taught me, or shown me firsthand all the challenges that our clients face.
You're a startup, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. And we were, trying to fly the plane as we were piecing it together. We came over, we had at least 70 clients that were, actively doing deals, and we were trying to figure out our health insurance and bookkeeping and all that stuff. And it was a lot more involved, I think, than either of us thought it would be. But now that we have, pretty well-tuned engine running, it's super rewarding to have our own thing.
When was that transition? I don't recall exactly.
So 3 years ago,
Okay.
last month.
Right on. Oh, nice. Congratulations.
3 years ago. You guys made it through the first 6 months. You've survived.
Yes.
It's like startup across all industries and rock bands. Yeah, like 90% of all rock bands. This is a real statistic. 90% of all rock bands back in the day, right? First 6 months, they break up. You slept with your girlfriend. You stole my drugs. No, I'm being real stereotypical. Whatever the case may be, you spelled my name wrong on the back of the CD jacket. 90% they're gone. It's, I don't know what the specific one is for startups across all industries right now, but it like a high number. You got to make it through the first 6 months. Then after the first year and a half, right? And you start to gain a little bit of momentum and stuff. So congratulations to you guys. And we're excited from, making it through and 3 years in. And interesting, like so many people, it's not surprising any longer, to experience in conversation, talking to people, having started some kind of a business during or right after COVID, right? That's a lot for a lot of us, just emotionally. Let's say, you know what, if I don't do it now, I'll never do it. And having the sort of the intellectual and the emotional bailiwick to say, I'm going to take the risk. That's not my way of saying it was benefit to having a global health pandemic, but in great societal transition, sometimes we see, I had a professor in college that was, focused on entrepreneurship as a discipline, and would say, like, it's better to start when the wave is low, right? And by the time that wave crests, economically, you figured a lot out about yourself, about how to run a company and so forth, and you're ready for the next big uptick. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. So congratulations.
Yeah, no, thanks. Yeah, I think the pandemic, really showed us that, you could obviously work from home. We're a small firm. There are just 4 of us right now, but we're all over the U.S. right now, and it works. I mean, the ability to just hop on Teams or Zoom, and it's not quite the same as walking down the hallway, but it gets the job done, and we do a good job of excuse me, staying connected. We try to meet daily, or at least 4 times a week, just to go over what everyone's working on and just make sure we keep up the tight bond that we had built prior to the pandemic.
So are you solely practicing Vermont, or is the firm solely practicing in Vermont, or do you all practice in other states as well?
Yeah, I mean, normally there's some connection to Vermont, but we practice all over. I mean, we don't advertise in other states or anything like that, but
Right.
Most of our clients come to us via referral, and if an investor or a past founder had a good experience and they know of someone in some other state, we frequently get clients that way. So, we've clients all over the place.
Gotcha. Excellent. So to bring it back to my question of what would you sort of pitch Vermont as for those companies that might be founding, or maybe they've gotten going a little bit, but they're really trying to figure out how to take that next step, and they need services from someone like Moody Advisors. What's your pitch for Vermont, or why are folks maybe coming to you looking at Vermont to get their investment here, to associate their business here?
Yeah, I mean, it's cheesy, but Vermont's just a great place, and it's a supportive ecosystem. I mean, you have a variety of different viewpoints throughout the state, obviously, but I feel like there's for the most part, a civility and almost a tolerance for different points of view, and an understanding that we can still be a larger community and have different viewpoints, which is attractive to people and I think refreshing as well. So I think, A, it's the people. B, it's a beautiful place to play outside, whether it's on the lake or in the mountains. There's lots to offer with the introduction of Hula and other co-working spaces, VSET, and others. There are lots of opportunities that make it easy to collaborate with others who are going through similar challenges, and people can support each other. And I think, because it's a smaller market, it's easier for people to get connected to others, and most people are willing to, tell their story and offer whatever advice they can.
Yeah.
So speaking of that too, Jerry, I know we ask a lot of questions on this show, but I'm actually curious, what are some of the questions that you're most commonly hearing from your clients these days? What are people coming to you with questions about? Are there any themes there that have emerged that you might be able to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is what we touched on a little earlier. Just, capital is still hard to come by. There are people, I think the ecosystem's evolving in that there are investors and, either state agencies or banks even, who are more willing to take the risk of giving some kind of loan to a company maybe a couple of years ago wouldn't, because they, I think they have the understanding that a lot of these companies have true value. They might just be struggling to get over that hurdle to get to the value that's slightly higher than their last financing. So, I think that is changing. And then, some other questions are, and one thing that we struggle with is just, the cost of, I guess the larger issue is our demographics are getting older. There are a lot of people who own businesses that are looking to sell. Doing a sale transaction is expensive, no matter how, or doing it right, at least, is expensive from a legal standpoint and a financing standpoint often. finding a way to make those transactions affordable, but also protecting both the buyer and seller with good legal counsel. I think that's a challenge that, we're trying to figure out ways to make better work for a lot of the smaller Vermont businesses that we work with.
Driven by data. Driven by technology. Driven by community development. Driven by the need to get results for your project. SM Graves Associates. Delivering real estate development to you, including project management and pre-development services with a keen focus on delivering community-oriented projects. We build profitable projects that respond to the needs of your neighborhood. Join the SMG family. Find us at smgravesassociates.com.
So speaking of that, does it make a difference, do you see, if a company is a B Corp and they're trying to sell, or they're already an employee-owned company and they're looking to bring in maybe some venture capital or some other type of partner to take it to another stage of growth, but still maintain those values of B Corporation status or employee ownership models?
I don't know if if the company is, profitable and attractive, I think that, I don't know. I think it's going to matter less, I guess, going forward, it seems, as, DEI becomes, it seems at least less important on the national stage, unfortunately. I think a lot, what I've heard from a lot of people, and I hope to see, is that hopefully investors that do care about it are going to start prioritizing it even more to put, if their votes weren't able to carry the day, then maybe their wallets will. So on the whole, I don't, I don't think it either makes or breaks a deal, but maybe it could be a value add for some of those investors that find that important.
And what about the pool of investors in Vermont? I mean, I think when I started kind of getting to know that environment in Vermont, 2016, 2017, it kind of seemed like there was, kind of one pool, one fund. And I've seen a couple others pop up. I haven't fully caught up with that atmosphere in all regards, but do you see a little more diversity in just the funds that are here and the funds that are interested as that grows? You see it all kind of funneling through the same channels?
No, I think for a brief moment there was almost, there weren't too many funds by any means starting up in the area, but there are only so many companies that, it makes sense to be backed by a venture capital fund. And so I think Vermont, that's an opportunity that Vermont has, is just making that known that, for the right company that fits the mold, I think there may be funds available. It's just, a lot of companies don't fit that mold, unfortunately. And other types of financing are probably a better option.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned some of the financing, learning and growing with the space too. Some lenders being more willing to lend on models that maybe a few years ago they weren't as comfortable with. Is that coming from anywhere in particular? Is it the same old banks, or is it, the credit unions in the state, or is it maybe a result of some of the credit unions merging and becoming a little bit bigger themselves to have a little bit more of that capacity?
Yeah, and we've seen some new banks come online. There's Bank of Burlington and Baldwin Bank, I think out of New Hampshire. Two banks that, they're looking to get new business clients and revenue, and they may be more willing to, make loans that a bigger bank might not be willing to make. We've seen, so there's the newer banks. I I haven't personally seen a lot from the credit unions, but private credit, private loans from like quasi banks have been on the rise for sure.
Yeah, your CDFIs like what's Janacino and just the president over there. Or,
The Flex Capital Fund.
yeah, and things like that. It seems to me that it's going to take some time for some of the new chartered banks in the state, as it usually does, to actually grow, to a level of assets where they really are a force to be reckoned with. No matter how aggressive they are about making loans. I mean, depending on their charter, there's just certain restrictions you have. How you can deploy at a time and all that stuff, you know what I mean? And I'm sure if in the environment we're currently in, and I don't mean just, since Trump became president, I'm talking in the environment we're in post the pandemic, I think those banks generally are playing it pretty conservative, relatively speaking,
Right.
Yeah, they don't want to sick anyone with these high rates if they, if they have more to be concerned when there's higher rates on the table, right? It makes it harder for everything to come full circle. So what else, we've talked a lot about, capital and debt financing, things like that. What else do you, I guess at Moody Advisors, like what are some of the areas that you guys are really helping companies deal with, in terms of your expertise and, what folks come to you for?
Yeah. My favorite thing to do is when I get to kind of act as outside general counsel to companies, where, we're working with either the CEO, the sales team, or their chief operating officer and really, getting involved in the, or at least apprised of the day-to-day operations and better understanding, where some of their client vendor contracts may fit in the grand scheme of things. We do a lot of that work. And then, when companies are looking to sell, is one of the other.
Making sure all that is lined up to run smoothly.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, I remember something that came up in our conversation was really understanding how that legal expertise can also translate into business strategy.
Yeah,
Just talking to someone at Hula today about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, legal services come at a big cost. Like there's no way getting around that. I think, our best clients are the ones who have had a successful company and exit before because they know the value we bring. And until a person sees that on the other side, it's hard to make people believe it's worth the cost. But we can definitely add value. We try not to be a cost center ever. We've worked with companies in every industry at every size, all over the country. And through that, we have a lot of different insights that we're happy to share with our clients. And I think does prove to be a real asset a lot of the time, especially when we're in that, general counsel role. And it's not like, oh, hey, we have this deal. We've kind of structured the business terms. Now can you come in and do the legal stuff? It's when we can get involved, at the outset. A lot of times, either the tax treatment of the transaction or some other legal aspect will, maybe be more important than some of the business points that have already been discussed.
Especially if you've made decisions that run counter to their best, if we had only not cornered ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Ryan.
You mentioned legacy planning, right? Like that's one of those big transitions that oftentimes, companies might not be thinking about early enough. And so, first of all, I'm sure the easy answer is anytime. But what are some of like the triggers that a founder might be looking at that they should really seek expertise like yours to put that legacy plan in place for themselves or their partners?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely anytime. I mean, earlier the better. The good thing is, um, there's as soon as you start to see traction, I guess, and you see growth, that's a really good time to try to pause and say, we're projecting we're going to go here. Are we set up to be successful there? We over the years, I mean, we do dozens of conversions from limited liability companies, LLCs, to corporations because, I mean, it often is easy to set up an LLC as you're starting a business. There are tax benefits. It's, it's simpler to govern from an administrative standpoint. But then there are also a lot of benefits to having a corporation as you grow. There's a provision of the Internal Revenue Code, Section 1202, which excludes tax on the greater of 10 million or 10 times your basis in C corporation stock for qualifying small businesses. And that's, I mean, a huge benefit. And at some point in a company's growth, as they're starting to take off, if they're an LLC, it's a good time to do that conversion so you can take advantage of that.
Big time.
Yep.
I think this is probably an appropriate time, Ryan, to tell you that Will and I have taken out a He-Man insurance policy on you. Did you see the dark sedan following you all day long?
It's been in my home office.
While we're cashing in, baby. Not only do you see a lot of you spoke a couple of times, Jerry, to the here's the value. I'm using my hands on an audio podcast. That's bad. Here's the value that a company actually is, and here's where the owner really, need. The difference between what you think you need to get and what something is actually worth can be different. But there's this other issue, right? In my world, in the real estate world, people will have taken all the equity growth out over, 30 or 40 years in some cases, right? In other words, they didn't invest in the property at all. They just kept taking the money and using the money. And then they get to the end and they're like, well, I want $1.2 million for this property. And it's like, my bank says this thing's worth $350,000.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. I thought I could make, well, yeah, but you took the equity out, right? You didn't put it back. There have to be examples that run parallel to that scenario in the rest of the business world, right?
No, definitely. And, I think there's that scenario, and then there's, I think running parallel with that scenario and a lot of these closely held businesses in New England or wherever, is the issue that, the founders, the people that have started these businesses and made them what they are, they contribute a lot of the value to those companies. And when there's a handoff or a sale of that business, it's not always going to be, unfortunately, turnkey where revenue stays going up or flat. And it's a transition period. We work with companies all the time with transition planning for sales like that to try to smooth that out a little bit. But it's challenging.
Did you create institutional processes, or was this a personality activity?
Exactly. And I think that plays into the value that you were talking about, Scott, is that, people rightly so feel like they've invested their lives into these businesses and they've created truly a lot of value. But when you're looking to sell it, how much of that value is transferable is a different question than what, inherently the current company has. And so bridging the gap between those two things definitely takes a lot of counseling on our part.
I feel like I commented on something that somebody said to that effect today on LinkedIn that was about basically, if all the value lies in the founder, then you haven't really built a business. You've just self-employed yourself, right?
That's 100% right.
Yeah. And I mean, that's true with most law firms. I mean, or any service industry, really, you're you're only worth as much as your attorneys are worth at the end of the day.
Right. That client base is worth, plenty if you've built a team around you that learns from you and is able to continue on that work. But if you haven't, if you've kept yourself as that key person, if you've, guarded your own value too much and haven't given of yourself to the business enough, then you end up being the business. And we've all got a timer on us, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
This feels very topical to a recommendation someone gave me just recently. So I haven't read this book yet, but the book is called Built to Sell by John Warrillow, Warrillow. And what you were saying just kept reminding me of the concepts that someone was describing from that.
So, I mean, how about this? Have you run into a business or a founder in particular where you've kind of seen this? And can you talk a little bit about maybe helping them navigate through where you're able to come in early enough where you can recognize, okay, this founder is where a lot of the value is. How do you as a law firm, as an attorney, come in and coach and guide that individual or small team into turning the business into the thing that holds the value?
Yeah. I mean, so like you said, I think a lot of it is, institutionalizing those things that have created value for the founder group or individual founder, and making sure it can be disseminated to others, whether they're existing team that may stay on through a sale or whoever they're selling the business to. And we often struggle. We're not, business brokers. Unfortunately, we frequently work with them. But one place we can add value is, we see term sheets all the time. We see pitch decks, and we can, help advise people on how to better present their value proposition. Really is what we're helpful at doing. And also trying to, in a gentle way, coach people towards financing opportunities that are a good fit for their business. I mean, I think a lot of people just, they hear about venture capital in the news and they're like, oh, that's what I need to do. I need to go get all these third-party investors to invest in my company. It'll be great. And the truth is, like, a lot of businesses just aren't a good fit for that model. And so either bank financing or, finding just one or two strategic investors that share the founder's values and maybe, have a big enough portfolio where they're looking to diversify, and investing in a unique smaller business may make sense for them. Or, it could be totally non-financial where they just want to see this venture succeed.
It may even be that, and I get that this is more relevant to kind of, like the work I do in real estate development, but it may be that you can create a business on new projects. You can make a slow transition from. This is a variety of different ways of getting to a point where you can make a transition into ownership, and you can even get investment from partners or your existing employer rather, or other investors, that were part of other projects. But I mean, there's certainly an equivalent of that in some way, shape, or form in other industries, right? Including tech. And isn't a lot of it just, people go, oh, I have a tech-oriented solution, so it's definitely going to be venture capital I have to get, whereas it's more like industry and segment. There's a lot more that goes into it, isn't there, Jerry? Like,
no, definitely.
Moody is my only way to go.
And one thing, we saw the rise of for a few years, and then unfortunately, I feel like there's been a step back, is where, industry leading companies started making investments in startups. I feel like that just makes so much sense, and I'd love to see more of that. It's a great value proposition for the companies making the investments. And, if you have these startups that the investor can also be their customer and their biggest investor, it's just a great model. And I hope that that model sees a resurgence as hopefully the economy starts to bounce back a little. And these companies may have a little more cash to play with, the bigger companies that would be making the investments, that is.
Yeah, that's definitely aspirational, but it makes a lot of sense, especially in our environment, our economy, and sort of brand and image of Vermont is, with B Corp capital, and we want to see each other succeed. And so if we can loosen up a little bit from those successful companies and everybody can grow together, it makes a lot of sense.
Definitely.
I have one more question, and then because we do have to wrap it up. Okay. So the three of us here, the Innovato 2 crew, we're always talking about, oh man, this is a huge opportunity, right? That's not being fully realized. Where are the big opportunities in the Vermont ecosystem that just aren't fully being capitalized right now? But if you had to, wave a magic wand, it's just your personal, like, man, that's a sector that more people should be getting into, or what? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, just from reading the headlines in the news, I've seen the state's got a ton of money from the federal government for chip manufacturing, and I'd love to see more startups in the space. I think it's a high barrier to entry, but I think that's one area where the money's probably there. I don't personally know that, but I know it, at least at the state level, it's available. And it's going to some of the larger players in the state, but I think it could be an opportunity for earlier companies as well.
So if there's some scrappy founder with an AI chip semiconductor design idea, they should reach out to Moody's and see how they can get started and tap into some of that flow.
Exactly.
Sounds like we'll need to circle back with Doug Merrill later.
Yeah. And, can they please, locate like down here by Rutland or Bennington, or the other half of
A little bit.
I like to think is the better half, but I'm not. This ain't
There's
no.
not a bad half, luckily.
There's not a bad half. That's exactly right. See, this is why
true.
we have attorneys as friends, because they know how to say things way better than I do.
There you go. So, hey, before we wrap up, Jerry, if someone is interested, how can they connect with you and Moody Advisors? And, what's the call to action, or what's the invitation from you guys?
Yeah, sure. So feel free to check out our website. It's just moodyadvisors.com, or you can shoot me an email at jcarter@moodyadvisors.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate getting your perspective and expertise. And I'm sure we could all use more of it. So I'm sure we'll be in touch. And thanks again. Really appreciate you being on the show.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me, and I'll talk to you soon.
Find Innovato 2 on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and subscribe to Interchain Live on YouTube for video podcasts. Innovato 2 is a collaboration of Interchain Live and M the Media Project.